Okay, one more time, guys. Bruce Norris.
Oh boy. How many of you are hearing me speak for the first time? Wow, that's a lot. Okay. What we're known for is looking ahead and seeing what's next. And the reason I find that necessary is because as an investor, I've made mistakes that have cost me a lot of money. In 1989, in a peak market, built 7 houses, got done with them in June of 1990, and the whole world changed on me. And it wasn't very pleasant. And so I tried to figure out the timing of the market. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And this is a long presentation that I'm going to be moving briskly through. Okay. Why am I up here? I get a kick out of teaching. I'm not here for you to buy anything. I just spoke in front of 450 people this morning, maybe 550 people. I made no attempt to sell them anything because I enjoy teaching. It's why I'm up here. And so the company still buys houses. We bought 50 houses so far this year to flip. We've built 12 in the last 6 months. So we're still up to our eyeballs in stuff every day, okay? I'll tell you one thing I do want you to know about. In the education side, we have a charity event in October. And we have a radio show that you can listen to online, and done it for 7 years. We interview a lot of the top people in the country, economists. In October, we have a panel of those people. So president of, let's say, chief economist of Fannie Mae will be there, Doug Duncan. John Boyd, the Boyd guy that is in charge of telling hedge funds what to do and builders what to do. And it'll be a really good, stellar panel that we get to do Q&A for a couple hours. You go there, you pay $200. That money goes directly to either one or 2 charities, Make-A-Wish or Children's Hospital. We usually raise $70,000 that night. The Norris Group pays for the dinner for everybody, and it's a great night. So we've done that for going on 8 years. I Survived Real Estate 2016 will sell out, it always does. So if you haven't been there, how many of you have been there? So ask them, it's worth going to. Okay. Can you see that? I'm going to talk a little bit about what the most important word in real estate is. So if I asked you that question, I want you to think about, don't have to say it, what's the most important word in real estate to you? Location. That's an interesting one, so let's talk about that. This is a 4-plex in Grand Junction, Colorado. There's nothing special about it. It doesn't have green grass. It has no grass, just dirt. And it has kind of an ugly, it's just a square box with 4 openings, A, B, C, and D. In 1980, it sold for $180,000. In 1985, it sold for $40,000. The reason I know that is I was the buyer, had 40 grand. It took 9 months to negotiate that. We bought all of the HUD 4-plexes they had in one shot. Same exact location cost somebody millions of dollars. Made somebody that had exactly the same location a ton of money. What was the difference? Timing. Okay? Nothing special about that location, but when you buy a 4-plex at 40 grand, your odds are pretty good it's going to work out. What do you think? Okay? This is a little hard to see, but this is Palm Springs. Yay, all fancy. In 1988, and by the way, I'm going to try and teach you how to recognize opportunities too during this talk. In 1988, I missed an opportunity for 6 months. I drove through it every day and didn't recognize it. Building boom going on everywhere. And I was driving through this area that had 50 building lots on lakes and golf courses. Not one new house being constructed. And one day it just hit me. One guy must own all those. It's the only explanation. No one, not 50 people individually could make the decision, no, I don't want to build. So I looked up who owned them, and it was the Bass brothers in Texas. I didn't know who they were, so I called up and asked to speak to Mr. Bass. And they had a good laugh because that's sort of like calling Donald Trump's company and say, I'd like to speak to Donald. But after 3 days of persistence, I got to speak to the CEO of the Bass brothers. He said, the lots are in escrow. I said, okay, and I hung up, and then I called him right back, and I thought, lots fall out all the time. So when that falls out, that's a presumptive close, Please call me back. And a couple days later, call me back. He said, they have fallen out of escrow. I'm going to fly out and meet you. So a billionaire is flying out to meet me in California. What do you wear? Biggest favor I ever did for myself in that particular day was I was myself. I didn't know how to play any other role. So I was just myself. So I meet this guy. He has lawyers that drew up a document that was over an inch thick and had a table of contents. The first line was personally liable. And so I quickly read the table of contents and I said, you know, Mr. Kolba, I said, I can't do anything that you want on that list. I said, let me tell you what I can do. So I outlined what I could do for him. I could buy the properties, pay him back in 6 months, put nothing down, and have no payments. At that point, oddly enough, he didn't say no to that. He started to ask me other types of questions. He said, tell me about yourself. I said, I'm married, got 2 kids. And then he said, what's your hobby? I said, you know, I just kind of got into it about a year ago. I built a whole room of model railroading. He says, you're kidding me. I love that stuff. What kind of trains you have? After a few minutes of that, he stood up and he says, you know what, young man? He said, I'm going to give you your shot. He said, fax over to me on Monday in Texas, whatever you want, I'll do. Is it possible to pull together a multi-million-dollar deal on the backs of having something in common?
Yeah.
Yes. $2 million purchase, basically nothing changed from the handshake deal. Faxed over the one sheet. The lawyers called me back, said, pal, you must be the greatest salesman in the world. Never seen anything this simple in our life. And it's not what happened. What happened was what Steve Covey talks about, the low cost of high trust. He bought me. And I came through for him. I paid him off. One of the best days of my life as an investor was calling Mr. Kolba up inside of that 6 months saying, your last 80 grand's on the way, man. I did it. Now, I had lots left over and I sold them. I made $1 million inside of that 6 months. I'm not telling you that to tell you about the making of the $1 million. The next year, I found a way to give it back. So when I built those 7 custom homes, I donated most of that $1 million back over the next 2.5 years. Same location, just missed it by 1 year. Messed my life up for 2.5 years. Now, if you want to know what pressure is, I had 7 custom homes with construction loans, 300 grand a piece, that at the end of the construction loan, they kind of build in interest, but when you're done with that, there's payments. And back then, interest rates didn't start with a 3. They started with a 10. And so I had $3,000 payments times 7 starting in 1 month. My builder partner left the country, and all of my investors had their names on the loan, couldn't pay their share. I literally woke up one morning with $21,000 more debt than I had the month before. My builder partner said, I don't know how you think you're going to make that happen. I said, I don't have any choice. I'm going to give it my best shot. And my best shot got me through in 2 years. I did all of that. Made every payment. You know why that was possible? Because first of all, I didn't take any other out other than go through it, which is the biggest favor I ever did in my career. Because I learned how to make 21 grand more a month. Here's what happens. As those bills dissipated, I retained the skill. So by the time I got to 0, I still retained the earning skill, only didn't have anywhere to go, which was much better. Yeah. Much better. We got rid of 2 homes, actually. I just did an interview with a guy that was involved in that transaction a long time ago. I traded 2 houses for a 60-foot yacht, straight across. And I was so excited because I thought owning a free and clear 60 yacht wouldn't cost me anything monthly. That didn't turn out to be true. But literally the same location, 1 year off in timing, $1 million difference. Oh man, you can't see that. Can we turn the dim lights? I just got to see the sign. It's just hilarious. Rosamond, but it's the statement of the city. Welcome to Rosamond, gateway to progress. Does that look like? I mean, if you were going to have that for your name of your city, you've got to paint the sign at least once every 20 years. That's got to be mandatory. That does not look like a progressive place. Well, in 1989, somebody decided they needed 120 new lots. And they created 120 lots in '89 and tried to do a project which failed. 3 other attempted projects were failed over the next 10 years. Another way to get deals is to be on the top of somebody's list that finds stuff. And so out of the blue one day I got a call. Bruce, you may want to go over and see these lots. It's 93 finished building lots. The guy bought the paper, $3 million note for 100 grand. And he wants to sell them for 3 grand a piece. Finished building lots, sidewalks, sewers, streetlights, the whole shebang in place, all view. Well, I wasn't going to Rosamond until then, but I started. This is the other thing. You get an opportunity to do that, you go directly there. Period, end of story. I drove there, stood on the lot, said put them in escrow. It's the single best deal I've ever seen in my life. We built out those homes. My land cost was 1% of the finished product. Will that work?
Yeah.
You can screw up a lot of stuff once your land cost is 1% of your finished product. My point is, somebody started that in '89, cost them $3 million. Same location, made me millions of dollars. So location is secondary to this other word, timing. I'd rather know when to than how to, anytime. Now, I'm going to wrap up this idea of timing with this. This is an individual house in Moreno Valley. In 2006, it sold for $365. In 2009, it sold for a little less than that, $64. Only 3 off. And I just sold it for $275 and closed escrow a month ago. So we went from $365 to $64 to $275. The definition of market value is the price that you will arrive at if the buyer and seller are equally knowledgeable, equally motivated. And then there's a very important last line. It says, and the transaction is absent undue stimulus. Okay? So what's transactional stimulus? How many of you guys own any kind of units? Okay, let's say we have a unit for sale. It's a 4-plex, and I decide I'm going to sell it. I say, you know what? I'm going to carry the paper. Not only am I going to carry the paper, I'm going to carry paper at no interest. I'm going to carry a 30-year no-interest loan, all of its principal. Will that 4-plex sell for more than any other 4-plex? It should. Why? Because it has transactional stimulus. Okay. An appraiser, his job is to look at this, go, God, that's really weird. Why is that 4-plex sold for 80 grand more? Oh, nothing, no interest. He can rationalize bringing that comp down, saying that isn't reflective of market value. That's transactional stimulus. So here's a good question. In 2006, that sells for $365. Did we have transactional stimulus?
Yeah.
No, and you didn't need it. You had 15 comps just like it. But what you had is even more important. You had systemic stimulus. You had a lending world that said anybody can get anything they want. All you have to do is fill out a piece of paper. Systemic stimulus is very dangerous if you get on the wrong side of it. Every time I've made $1 million on one shot, I've been on the right side of that stimulus, which is why I got very interested in writing timing reports and getting rid of stuff before all that stuff happened. So in 2009, it sells for 64 grand. That's called reverse systemic stimulus. Can you have so much product up for sale that it goes for dirt value? In California? Yes. You can't buy a building lot in Moreno Valley for 64 grand. But I bought the house for it. Now, was there a lot of competition when I bought it for 64 grand? No. Why? Because it was fearful. The numbers made perfect sense, but you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Here's the one question I always ask myself before I get into something. I mean, I'm looking at charts, so that's how I make decisions. But I ask this question. Are they ever going to build another one of these? In Grand Junction, are they ever going to build another 4-plex? Because if they are, it ain't going to be for 40 grand. Are they ever going to build another house in Moreno Valley that's like this? If they are, it ain't going to cost 64 grand. And really, that's, as long as it makes sense to hold it monthly, I can get to the next market where they build one, then I'm a happy guy. So that's an important thing. So the most important word in real estate for me is timing. I'd rather know when to than how to any day. So let's say, and by the way, every audience this year is pretty much packed. Is this a big number for this club to have here? Almost every club is standing room only, packed to the gills. That either means you're excited or you're scared. And usually it means you're wondering, uh-oh, are we close to it being over?
It means Bruce Norris is here.
Nah. Yeah, you wanted to hear that bio, right? So not everybody makes the same decision. So what should you do? Maybe you should stay put. Reasons to stay put. You've accumulated well-located rentals. There are people I know that have the perfect rental situation, neighborhoods, all of them they would live in. They don't want to sell them. That's why they showed up, and they have that type of property. Their debt levels are safe. So even if you had another big downturn, it's not a big deal. So they can hold this stuff. Maybe you believe there's plenty of safety and time left. So I didn't sell Moreno Valley this last month because I thought it was peaked out. I'm not saying we won't get it higher. I just decided I had something else in mind that would serve my purposes better. So you might just think we have more room to go in price. You also might have a low tax base. When that property in Moreno Valley sold for $365 and then sold for $64, what happened to the tax base? It went way down. It went down 80%. Is that worth retaining? It might. So a lot of people that have properties that they bought a long time ago or they bought in a downturn have a tax bill that you aren't going to get to replicate again. And it was really something to think about. So you might stay put if those are your situations. Reason to cash out. You can cash out some of your inventory so you can own the rest free of debt. Is it a stupid idea to own stuff free and clear?
Sometimes.
Yeah, there's times probably it's not the best idea, but if you ever get there, it's boring. It's nice. I had lunches with a lot of people in 2007, 8, and 9. And there were very different meetings. There was some people that were, I just lost $1 million and I've got to make it back. And they had a lot of debt and everything. And then you'd have lunch with somebody that didn't know a thing. And their house had gone down by 40%. They go, yeah, it's a real bummer. What do you want for lunch? You like the ham sandwich or the... In other words, it wasn't, we just got it off the front burner. It wasn't their whole life because they didn't have any debt. You might have a better place to go with the money. So you might have, I'm going to exchange this property in Moreno Valley and go somewhere else with it. And that's a better decision. You might feel we're close to the peak and the upside isn't worth the risk. At this point, I'm 63 years old and I consider myself an investor. When I bought that house at 64 and it went up to 275, was that a good investment? Went up 400%. I could have held it and gone from 275. What if we replicated the 365? I consider that speculative, not an investment. Could I buy that house at 275 and make sense of a $1,200 rent? Probably not. So that's one of the reasons you might think about your situation is if you think we're done enough that your investments, what if you have a 400% profit on something? Is it okay to take it? Yeah. Most people don't do that. That's a very interesting thing about us. We refuse to be done. You'd be able to reach your long-term financial goals. You're done. How many people got done in 2006 that were undone by 2008? It's just like, I can't sell it. I'd pay all that tax. Well, it solved itself. Now but by 2008, you couldn't sell it and make any profit, so the tax went away. But you still had all the stuff that you wish you'd gotten rid of. So that's some of the reasons to cash out. You might change seats. You like a location better. I exchanged that house in Moreno Valley for 2 new houses in Florida. So I doubled the value of the equity and I doubled the cash flow because I went to a place that I looked at a chart and said, I like that place. And I'm not encouraging you to go to Florida. Anything out of state's way more difficult than in state, just so you know. So I'm the last person to say, oh yeah, run to Florida, I'll show you all. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm there because my best friend lives there. I've done business with for 30 years. We have 50 flip houses already in Florida that we've bought this year, but he's fixed them all. He's boring. I like the guy. How many contractors can you trust for 30 years? Like one? It's a short list, man. It's a short list. You like a product type better. Product type better, maybe you go from a single family to a fourplex or a fourplex to a single family. You might make that change. Or you like a category better. When I exchanged some of my properties in 2005, I went to Texas for the few properties. And when I sold 2 of the homes in Texas, I came back to California and bought a commercial building. The commercial building went for $950,000 at the peak. We bought it for $319,000. I sold 2 houses in Texas to own that commercial building. I changed product type or categories, basically, again, using charts to understand when to do that. You like to buy in quadrant 2, not in quadrant 4. So we have an education system that divides the real estate investment world into 4 quadrants. We're in quadrant 4. In quadrant 4, you have price aggression. You have very big shortage of foreclosures. How many of you are buying an REO this month? Pete? 1? No? Okay. It's not very common. Here's why I'm in Florida. I'm interviewing Doug Duncan, chief economist of Fannie Mae on the radio show. So in preparation last year, I read their quarterly report. 25% of all the nation's losses came from one state, Florida. As soon as I read that, I called my buddy up in Florida. I said, Alex, there has got to be a developer that has building lots they don't want. There has to be. It's a no-brainer. And so 2 days later, we're in escrow with the lots that we currently are building on. Because you look at charts and make a decision what quadrant you're in. Florida was in quadrant 2. Why? Because they have a 4-year foreclosure process. In 2015, they were experiencing 2011. And because I understand those charts, I can go and say, this is where you find deals, okay? So how you find deals is very different in quadrant 4. And why I said that you might like to buy in different quadrants. What if you're really great at building relationships where an agent can send you inventory over and over again, but not so great cold calling or dealing with an owner directly and getting a discount? Quadrant 4 demands that, it really does. You're going to be in front of somebody that owns something. And you've got to get good at negotiating that. So it's a different skill level. What determines what you should do? What quarter of life are you in? There's a little program, I have on the TV where you can go to movies. I'm a movie fan. And you go to a movie and then you can go casting characters and you can see the lifespan of people. When they're born, when they passed away, or if they're still alive. How many 20-year quarters do we get?
4.
About 4. Sometimes less, sometimes more, but that's about it. I'm 63. What quarter am I in, maybe? And I guess the point is, I'll probably do things differently in fourth quarter than I would in quarter 1 and 2, because I probably won't take the risk, right? So in some ways, I want that locked and loaded, and I'm sort of done. Doesn't mean I can't go do crazy things and with some of my money, but most of it's going to be pretty boring stuff. At 28, that's not true. Okay, so figure out what quarter of life you're in, and second, what's your tolerance for risk and loss? And that sometimes never changes with age. Okay, I've experienced losses. It's no fun giving back $1 million that you just won or just earned. And you know what my attitude was about that? I'll just go make some more. Everybody has that attitude. I've seen people kill themselves over losses. And I've seen some people just lock and load and go do it again because they have the experience. Figure out who you are, and can you change that? You can. You really can. People that do well with that happening to them trust that they can replicate what they had. People that think that was a one-time shot, man, I got lucky. Maybe they did. They'll never get it again. Those are the people that are in danger because they think my life is altered forever. And that's a scary place, okay? You can train yourself. I'm probably the easiest person in the world to give bad news to because I've trained myself to go to solution mode. My mind doesn't linger I don't go, oh no, what are we going to do? My brain instantly kicks out 3 or 4 solutions. I concentrate on that, and that's all I concentrate on. We already have the problem. Let's go fix it. If you train yourself to do that, you have a lot better day. You really do. Okay? So think about what your particular tolerance for risk and loss are. Maybe you'd like to pursue a new passion. It may not be this one, but there's other stuff that you might like to do. And here's an interesting one, and this is getting a little bit philosophical. What would your family prefer you do? I didn't ask permission from my wife, Marcia, if I could build 7 custom homes in Palm Springs. I didn't ask that. It was part of our business model. I didn't ask to buy the 50 lots. I didn't ask to buy the 7. Did she suffer anything because I had to pay 21 grand a month for 2.5 years? Yeah, but I didn't. Yeah, was I in a good mood all the time? No. All I'm saying is, at least 2 or 3 times a year, I get my counselor hat on, and I'm dealing with an investor, usually a male, that's getting divorced because he didn't know his family couldn't stand him anymore, because he had put them in positions that put himself under stress, and he acted really not so good. Before you do some of this stuff, you ought to ask, what would you prefer I do? At the end of 2005, I had sold about 100 properties that we had owned. I could have exchanged it all. I could have held a bunch of properties. I asked my wife, what would you like me to do? She said, could we just be done? That was not my nature to think that way. But I said, okay, paid the tax, and there's only one day a year I don't like that situation. Now, my wife passed away, and because of this business, we were able to do everything under the sun that she could dream up in the alternative world. I don't know how I would have lived with myself if I could not have done that, okay? So this business is really special. You can ask for a big raise. You can make it happen, okay? All right. Maybe you're already financially independent, and you just refuse to recognize it. I think a lot of people buy somebody else's plan. So what's your goal? Okay, well, I want 50 free and clear houses. Where'd you get that plan? Well, that's Tony Alvarez's plan. Okay, well, what was your plan? Well, I wanted to make $2 grand a month net. Okay. In other words, you ought to figure out what your plan is and recognize when you've got there. I think that's a good idea. Instead of chasing something that really isn't yours, you can get a lot more passionate about what you want and then maybe recognize, gosh, I actually am done. I've seen a lot of people mess up after they're done to get undone. It's very frustrating. 2006, I met with a guy who had a portfolio of rentals, had on a sheet of paper, front and back, 63 rentals that produced $22,000 of negative cash flow a month. He had millions of dollars of debt and $3 million of equity. It was 2006. Owned them in Florida and California. He heard me speak and telling them it's over. He said, I've never heard anybody say anything like that. You scared me to death. I looked at his properties. I said, honestly, you have 9 months to walk away a multimillionaire. If you don't do that, you're going to walk away with nothing. And he never sold that. He lost it all. You know, he was done, but he wouldn't cash the check. So realize when you're done. Okay, tell me the truth. How many of you guys get excited about something that looks like that in your neighborhood? Now, I used to be the worst, you know, drive on vacation, even in a state that I had no interest in. I'd see one of those and I'd be, you know, my wife would be giving me the elbow. Hey, we're on vacation, stop that. For me, real estate was a means to an end. And I got happier the day I realized that. I don't love fixing that house. I have not physically seen the last 500 houses we have flipped. It's not necessary, it's not part of our business model. I don't have to get excited about that. It's in its own little world without me, okay? What I get excited about is reading reports that you would certainly find boring. A couple days ago, I spent 4 hours reading 250-page reports on oil. Isn't that exciting? I mean, that's exciting stuff. Because I want to try and figure out what's next there, because that has a big effect on deflation or inflation, and it has a big effect on interest rates, has a big effect on real estate, oddly enough. You probably don't want to spend your time reading that stuff. That's what I get a kick out of. I like to read that stuff so I know what I think is next. So for me, real estate was a means to an end, and sharing what I understand about the market is fun. It's a passion. So to get to a peak price, there's a handout, has a what is that called? A QR code. Okay, barely know how to say it. All the charts you'll have, okay? So to get to a peak price, to answer your question, are we at a peak price? You need sales momentum. This is a sales momentum, and this is, it goes up from here. Here, is this sales momentum?
Pretty flat now.
It's flat. It's boring. It's very difficult to get to a peak price when you have just average sales. And that's all we have. You need a buyer willing to make sacrifices to own. When we built out Rosamond, 90% of the people that bought Rosamond House, which is 9 miles from Lancaster, and in between Lancaster and Rosamond there's nothing, there's tumbleweeds, 90% of the buyers worked in LA and bought in Rosamond and signed up for a 2+ hour drive each way to work to get their name on a grant deed, because that's how important ownership was in 2004 and 5. Is that the attitude today? No. It's absent, okay? So you don't have that mentality. You need lenders to say yes to capable and not capable buyers. Going back to 2008, FHA did 23.4% of their business to a FICO score of 579 or less, and 24% to a 580 to 619, a total of 47.5. Today they've combined the categories and it's 5. They went from it representing 47.5% of their business to 5% of their business. So are lenders loaning to everybody that shows up? Hardly. You can't get to a peak price without it. You need that to help sales momentum, and you need that to get to the people, the first-time buyer in there. You need trustee sales to be nearing their lows for the cycle. So here we have a chart that's pretty low. So are we nearing the lows for the cycle? It's a good question. Did we, by the way, is this chart legit? Did we foreclose on everybody? No, for the first time in ever, we didn't do that. We said, gosh, you know, you're behind 4 years, let's make a deal. And that's what happened. So this chart artificially went down. So to be honest with you, this chart, even though it looks really low, it's not that it's going to jump crazily, but it didn't do the damage it could have. There was a lot of damage that didn't happen because we came and said, let's do a loan mod. So are there people that owe still 120% on their house? Yeah, in California. And if you're in Victorville, you're in Apple Valley, you're in Lancaster, there's a lot of people that have loan mods that have no equity. They're basically just there paying a payment. There'll be a day, maybe they'll have equity, or the lender will certainly lose a lot less foreclosing on it. So it was an interesting way they handled it. But I'm suspicious of this chart telling me the entire truth, to be honest with you. But what normally happens when you have a turn of foreclosures, it's not pleasant. It does it very quickly. Within 2 years, you have a very different marketplace. This chart is what I call reactionary chart. It doesn't invent itself. It gets pushed there. And we'll talk about maybe the chart that pushes it there in a little bit. You need construction of new homes to be to be strong and drive both employment and migration. So is that really a strong construction chart looking at it from this perspective? If you look at this year and go, well, look at that. Construction's up 240%. And that's a factual statement. But if you look at it from this perspective, we're now almost tied with the year when interest rate for construction was 20%. We are still in depression mode in construction. It's incapable of driving migration, incapable of helping employment, okay? You can't get to a peak price without that thing kicking in. You need an economy doing well enough to encourage household formation. So what's our GDP growth last quarter? Was it less than 1? Okay, so we're not doing a very good job of having an economy that's producing household formation. You need owners with lots of equity to move up. In 2015, the median price sale netted 120,000. At the peak of the market, we were over 215. So it's not allowing a lot of cash to go to the next purchase. It's hard to get to a peak without that. You need inventory for sale to be below 3 months. We're not bad at 4 months. The mix is healthy, so we have less and less REOs, less and less short sales. We have really all the charts to show a very strong market. Should have price increases that are pretty strong, and we don't, okay, for the first time ever. And I'm really familiar